It's a very big challenge for society and an even bigger challenge, some might say, for employers and as it's playing out in workplaces. This particular issue in terms of the conflict in the Middle East at the moment, while it's not something that is new in some senses, but certainly the level of discussion, debate, the polarisation of people's views, the strength of opinions and emotion held by people on a global scale is really proving to be quite problematic and challenging for employers. I mean, I've just come back from speaking at a conference in the US where there have been some extraordinary cases reported in the last few weeks where candidates for roles in particular firms have had offers withdrawn because their prospective employers have been made aware of particular posts that have been shared by particular individuals as candidates who had received offers. A very high profile example of a law firm who withdrew an offer to someone who had posted a pro-Palestinian post on one of her social media pages and had her offer of employment withdrawn as a result of that. This is just one example of the tensions and challenges that employers are having to deal with. Now, in an Australian context, of course, we're seeing this play out, perhaps not so much as it might be in other countries, but certainly it's live here. But we've had our own issue, as you say, in relation to The Voice, where it was challenging. There were a lot of executives in organisations, a lot of organisations as a whole, who came out there and were very open about supporting a position in relation to something like this. Now, whether that might be a popularly held view within their organisation or not, I think it's fairly safe to assume that not everyone in your organisation is going to align on all issues of geopolitical or social or economic significance in your country at any point in time.
Is it fair to say employers, corporations are more involved in political issues now? Of course, more recently with the referendum on The Voice, many corporates taking a stand on that particular issue. Previous to that, of course, the issue of same-sex marriage.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting and something that was discussed in this conference at some length was, is that something that employers are just choosing to do, or is that something that is actually now expected of employers because employees and certainly the new generation of employees, without necessarily putting a label on which generation it might be, but certainly those who may be entering the workforce in the last 5 to 10 years, have a different expectation of what the employment relationship is about. They have different expectations of what their employers will stand for. If they sense that their employers are not standing for anything or are not taking a stance on a particular issue, then there's plenty of literature and plenty of anecdotal data that says that employees will disengage from that employer more quickly than might otherwise be the case. So this is something that I don't think is driven actually by employers wanting to do this. This is something that I see being almost imposed on employers as a result of changing expectations that employees have. And if you play this out, and if we're already at this point, and social media has no doubt played a part in it, but as has the pandemic and as has shifting expectations on a whole range of fronts, this is going to get worse. This challenge for employers is not going to get any easier, and there are arguably going to be more and more situations and circumstances where an employer is expected to have a position, articulate a position, and then is going to be judged by its workforce potentially as to whether it's true to that position in terms of its actions.
Well, not just judged by the workforce. I mean, there are the employees to consider, but also for many corporates, customers and shareholders. It's unlikely that all are going to agree.
That's exactly right. And these are, of course, if these were issues about which there were no controversies or there were no differences of opinion, it's not a problem for an employer to adopt a position. I mean, arguably that would be something that would be mandated for the employer, or a no-brainer to use the vernacular. But we're talking about issues that by definition are controversial. In a US context, they've dealt with Black Lives Matter. They've dealt with the recent issue of abortion and the Supreme Court rulings. Here we've had The Voice. There's globally the Middle East challenge. There's going to be more and more things. There's carbon emissions. There's all sorts of things. And employers are now having to resource up in terms of how they brand themselves in relation to these particular areas, over and above just trying to pay their power bills, no doubt, in terms of challenging economic times.
Jordy, there has been criticism of those corporates that certainly got involved in the voice debate. Is it your expectation perhaps that some of those corporates will now pull back and become apolitical, if you like?
Look, I understand why employers feel that that is the right thing to do, and I think they are being somewhat opportunistic in some respects to try to garner more favour from segments of their workforce by doing exactly what a number of corporations did. Look, my personal view in relation to this matter is that employers should ideally steer clear of stating a position in relation to issues that are divisive, unless that particular issue goes to the core of what that employer does operationally. Now, if it's an issue that might be of social and political relevance, but really has nothing to do with the core operating premise or functions of an employer, then I would really challenge that employer as to why are you going there? Now, if you do so, and ultimately it's their business and their calls to make, then you need to understand that there will be consequences. There will be legal consequences, and there will certainly be polarizing consequences within your workforce, and you will see conflict and you will see greater claims of bullying and harassment and vilification that will be made, and you as an employer will lose your ability to say that we have maintained neutrality and impartiality and we've been able to investigate these matters, and we are actually true to our beliefs about genuine inclusion and diversity and the respect of everyone's opinions, without an employee having to feel, well, I can't say or feel this way because my employer has come out there with a very strong statement to the contrary. This is the kind of question that I would be posing for employers, and I'd be asking them to think very carefully about whether some of them do what they've done over the last few weeks and months.